Welcome to Yeukai Business Show, UK's premier business show where we feature business thought leaders, high achievers, and industry experts. Today's episode is brought to you by World Outsourcing Solutions Limited, a company that specializes in helping executive business owners with virtual assistant services and business growth systems. Here's your host.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show. It's Trevor Stockwell here with you today, and I'm glad that you've joined us because my guest on this episode is Michelle. So Michelle is the CEO of the Elevate Diamond Strategy Company, and they help organizations grow and scale through strategic plans and initiatives, and also provides unbiased solutions to win against competitors. She's also the writer of the book, How to Grow and Expand Your Business in Times of Feast and Famine. She's also involved in other projects as well, which she's going to share with us. But for now, welcome Michelle Diamond.
Hi, thank you for having me.
No, it's great to have the opportunity to chat. Thanks for coming on the show. Maybe to start with, for people that haven't yet had the pleasure of meeting you, share a little bit about some of your background and your journey. I know you've done lots of different things. So in a nutshell, however you want to sort of share, but just something that's brought you to where you are today and how you help people.
Okay, no problem. So I actually started my career off in accounting and finance. It's interesting. Before that, I wanted to be an attorney. When I was younger, I used to like to argue. As I've gotten older, I can't stand argument. I'd rather take peace. So I shifted from becoming an attorney and I decided to focus on business. I went to undergrad for accounting. So I do have my CPA. For some of you, that's the equivalent of chartered accountant, but CPA in the States. I got my CPA. I worked for large companies. I worked for, at the time, it was Ernst & Young. Now it's EY. I worked for Colgate-Palmolive and a lot of other really global 100 organizations. After I worked there for a few years, I was actually doing audit, and then I did mergers and acquisitions. And I was enjoying it. However, I got to a place where while I appreciated understanding the foundation of companies from a financial and operational standpoint, I wanted to be a part of actually making those numbers happen. So I had my first, I would say quarter crisis, I think they call it now, in my early 20s. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was very good at my job and I loved it, but I couldn't see myself doing the same thing for years. So fortunately, a colleague of mine told me about strategy consulting, from which I had never really heard of, if I'm going to be honest, at that time. And then I realized I could marry what I loved, which was working with different clients and different companies and many different industries and sectors, with focusing on more of what I wanted, which was to help companies grow and help being a part of making those numbers happen. So I went to business school. I got my MBA from Duke University at the Fuqua School of Business. Then I worked at Accenture as a strategy manager for several years, where I did focus exactly on what I wanted, which was marketing, and new market entry strategies, as well as a lot of competitive intelligence work on purpose because I already understood the operational and financial side, and I figured this was a great adjunct. I worked with them on a lot of technology, high growth companies, helping them go public, some of them, others getting them acquired and preparing them for exit. After that, I actually went to the Cigna Corporation, and I oversaw a $20 million in-house business. This was a printing and distribution business, so nothing similar to the strategy work I had done. I moved there for personal reasons, but I loved the role because it gave me an opportunity to be an operational executive. I think it's always great to have, both sides of knowing, okay, what does it take to actually run a business versus what does it take to be strategic and take yourself outside of a business and still be unbiased. So I was actually brought in because I was unbiased, because at the time I knew nothing about printing and I knew nothing about warehouse or anything else. And there were a lot of people much older and my senior. So they weren't even happy I was there and that they now had to report into me. But you learn how to deal with people when you deal with so many people and so many clients. And as most of you know, the majority of business, I would say more than 50% of business is understanding how to deal with people and how to make them effective and being effective yourself. So fortunately, those skill sets worked. I was able to streamline that business. I spun off one of their product lines and consolidated. So it was a lot of change, but I was able to take them through and help them to save quite a bit of money in a short period of time. After that, I needed a new challenge. So I stayed within the Cigna Corporation, but I then worked in one of their divisions, and I actually ended up creating their competitive intelligence function. The way I created it was something I firmly believe in my whole career, but definitely as a consultant and on my own and as an advisor. If you ask very simple questions and people who should know the answer to those questions do not know the answer, there's rather a problem that needs to be solved or an opportunity that needs to be exploited. So in Cigna's case, the division at that time, it was only a $1 billion division. They're a lot bigger, but they didn't know anything about the competitive landscape, even though they decided they wanted to expand. So I made that my role, and then ended up creating an entire function, which was great because it was demand driven. Did that for a few years, and then realized that I missed the variety of working with clients. And at the time, I didn't want to travel as much. The world is much different now than when I first started out on my own. And consulting required a lot more travel than it does. Sometimes it can still require travel and sometimes not, since we have remote work. But at the time, for personal reasons, I wanted to give the type of growth strategy work that I love to companies of all sizes, but then do so in a way that I also could balance my personal life. And so I decided to go out on my own. Honestly, I didn't know where it was going to take me, but now over 16 years later, I'm extremely fortunate that I have been working on this. And we've worked, to date, the last time I've tallied, I've worked with 65 companies in 31 different industries at every growth stage, from startup, some clients have had zero, all the way up to Fortune 50, which would be the equivalent of your Global 100. So I've been very, very fortunate for the type of work that I've done. I have been able to help companies grow organically and via M&A, but focus a lot on really identifying how to grow profitably and making sure that the way that they do is sustainable and gives a competitive advantage at the onset. And of course, to try to set them up for a competitive advantage going forward.
Yeah. No, that sounds good. Sounds very interesting and active career and journey to where you are now. Mm-hmm. Maybe to start with then, I'm thinking through the people that are listening have various size companies. It's a twofold question, really. So the first element is, for companies that want to grow within their current market, what would be some of the elements that they have to consider in order for that to happen? And then the second part of that is more, okay, we've got this part done. We now want to reach out to a different area. What would you say would be some of the things that, might be obvious to you because of your experience and expertise, but maybe some people listening haven't even thought about that?
Yeah, it's something I'm happy to share, and it's something that I break down in my book. I know you talked about my book a little bit earlier, but my book is actually teaching companies how to develop their own growth strategies. I took growth strategy and I broke it down into a 10-step process to make it a lot more simple for people who don't even understand the concept. People throw in that term all the time, and some understand what that means and some don't. And so this is a way to do it. And so one of the things that I talk about that I will also express here is that, the way to do it if you want to further penetrate your existing market is you have to first look at everything as a whole. So let's just say you have a picture and this is my entire market, and then you have X portion. So then you need to look at the remaining portion of your market, first in a current state and of course the future state, right? Because even within your existing market, markets can change, right? They can grow, they can contract, they can, remain relatively the same. But if you look at just the current state and you look to see, okay, where are you not playing? And then you have to go and do the analysis to figure out, well, why are you not playing there? Is it a matter of just focus on your company's end where you really could, be addressing these other aspects of your market, but you just have not taken the time to do so because you've been so busy, with building up to wherever you got to at this point and or servicing your existing current and your customer base. Then you can look to say, okay, let's say there are desired parts of your market that you have thought of and have looked at, but you haven't been able to penetrate them. And you have to say, well, why? Are there existing competitors there? If there are existing competitors there, what are the competitors doing faster, better, cheaper than what you guys are doing from a firm? Because those are really the three main pillars of anything that you do. I don't care how innovative you get. I don't care how tech savvy you get. It doesn't really matter. It has to be faster, better, or cheaper for the customer. And so if it's, if you have something that, let's say, is those three things in your offering, your product or service offering, then it may be a matter of, okay, maybe it's a marketing issue and you just have to do a better job of communicating or introducing your brand to this new customer base. And then because they don't realize you're an option. If you're not faster, better, cheaper, and then you have to now look to say, okay, well, if we really want to serve these other areas of the market, then we have to come out with something that's going to serve them better than the competitors that they have right now. The other portion can be, let's say there's not existing direct competitors, but there's existing indirect competitors. So you have these aspects of your market that just don't use your product and or service, period. Right? They have different mindsets. Maybe you don't feel like it's needed. Then maybe, if you do still want to pursue them and you decide that it's going to be a profitable venture for you, or you believe that it can be, at the end of the day, then you should then take a look and say like, okay, well, how can we best educate this customer base and get them to a place where, they will now be aware of what we provide. They can see the benefit, the value of what it can do, whether it's an enjoyment benefit, whether it's an efficiency benefit, whether it's a profitability benefit, depending on what it is that you're offering. So you really have to dissect, and kind of, again, do the analysis, do the research part, but not just do the research part, do the analysis and make sure that you can see what those realized needs and unrealized needs are, and then where the gaps are. And then again, see, what your company can do. The other thing is to be cognizant of the fact that, depending on the size of your company or the capabilities of your company, even if you were able, let's say, to penetrate your market by whatever percentage that you like, could your company handle it? So you also have to make sure that you have the right, are you at capacity now? Do you have the right processes in place? Could you actually effectively expand in this way and not disrupt your existing business and things of that nature? It's great to always want to grow, but you still have to grow in a way that's going to make sense, for you and your company, regardless of how fast you scale or not. And so, you want to make sure that you're not just looking at everything from just an external aspect, which is important because the opportunity is there, but you have to also look at it from an internal standpoint and just see what your capabilities are, and then make a determination on what steps you would need to do to go after, again, whichever you determine or whoever helps you determine is the most attractive markets for you to go after. Excuse me, not markets. You said the existing market, whatever's the most attractive aspect of your market to go after.
Okay. Yeah. No, that makes sense. And I guess part of that is the health of the culture within the company as well. That if there's stuff that we've not dealt with as business owners, to then try and build upon that. If it's not proper, the foundation's not right to try and build on it, you're asking down the road.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, the culture part, I guess I always put that in a capabilities bucket. I mean, again, I go through it in my book, in terms of, when you do a in-depth company assessment. But yes, part of a company assessment is doing your culture and taking a look at your, who's there and what capabilities they have, rather from a mindset standpoint, also from a skill set standpoint. Those both things are important, in terms of when you're doing these other things, and whether or not you need to, shake up your organization structure or shake up the individuals that you're with. I mean, sometimes the hardest thing is, keeping the employees that you have and keeping the executives on your team you have when you're trying to get to the next level, because some will be able to go with you effectively and unfortunately some won't. And I know a lot of times it's very tough for people because there is an emotional aspect, obviously, as a business owner to what you do. But the way to think about it is, if someone is not the right fit, for a certain level that you're going to, then the best thing you can do for both parties, to be honest, is to rather give them see if there's another opportunity within your organization or your organization as you expand, because they just may be in the wrong seat, so to speak. Or if the organization isn't right for them anymore, try to be as respectful as possible, but try to, get the right people in the right seats. Because inevitably, if they don't do well and they end up failing, and you knew ahead of time that they probably weren't going to do well, or they showed initial signs of it, then it's going to be much harder down the line. So it's very important to do that. But like I mentioned earlier with the culture and mindset, that's very big too. I mean, I remember having a client and she wanted to double her size because she was a business owner. She was looking to exit in about 5 years. And so she wanted to double her size before she exited. And that was one of the biggest things. She had created a culture of relative, that was relatively risk averse. And so they had grown, but not really exponentially, not doubling their size. And so not only did her mindset have to change, but she realized her employees didn't even believe they could do it, even before anything else. Forget the analysis and opportunity and all this stuff. And so the first work had to be confronting that head on, because as you just alluded to earlier, the problems that a lot of times business owners and executives, they know this is the case, you try to ignore it. It never goes away. It only gets harder and harder to deal with. And if you try to build in a shaky foundation, just like anything else, it won't last. Yeah. So it is better to kind of address those things head on and try to make sure that, the company is prepared for growth in a multitude of ways.
Yeah. And a lot of that comes down to the responsibility of the leaders to communicate the vision and the plan, the path, the strategy, that this is where we're going, and then get engagement, get feedback, find out where the issues are with people. Everybody has certain limits, don't they? Of, like you say, mindsets, expectations, but also motivations. Maybe they're not motivated to suddenly move to another part of the country to pursue the aims of the organization. That's the sort of stuff to find out before you start the process, isn't it, really?
Yeah, no, it's very important.
Would you say then, so all of those points you've shared about the research and culture and the different elements, are they the same for the smaller businesses and the larger businesses? So would the main difference between scaling a small business and a large business just be capital investment, or is there other elements that maybe don't affect certain size businesses?
No, it definitely is not a capital issue. Larger organizations may get, they may have to get the approval from the board, to get the funding. And then smaller organizations may get, approval from, the venture capital or the private equity firm if they're backed in that way or things, or however they get their, their capital resources. So no, that's not really different. The approach is the same in terms of how to grow and scale a business. But the biggest nuance is between large companies tend to have a lot of information, but it's very hard for them to execute. It's like turning around a big ship, to get everything on board. They're usually so inundated with all these different things. A lot of times they have stacks and stacks and stacks of things. And you say, oh, why didn't you use them? Kind of a thing. It's just, they have a hard time doing something, especially if they have to do something that's dramatically different, like if they have to, if their industry has shrunk, technology has disrupted them and they have to now pivot. It's very difficult for them to execute. Whereas smaller companies are the opposite. They are excellent with executing. They're very much like, okay, roll up your sleeves. Okay, what is it today? All right, fine. If it changes tomorrow, we'll go ahead. But their issue is that they typically don't have a strategy in place. They just kind of going, where the wind blows type of thing. And that may not be a bad thing, especially if they're growing very rapidly and they have something, they have some amazing, again, product or service offering, whether that's technology based or not, and they're doing very well and they're growing. That's not a bad thing, but they tend to be kind of all over the place, or they tend to be just kind of as they come, whether they're in bootstrapping mode when they're first starting out or even after they've gained traction. And so for them, it's about reining them in and saying, okay, that's great, you do all these things, but what got them to wherever they're at now is not the same thing that's going to get them to the next level. If you're a $10 million business and you're trying to go to $100 million, that's great that you got to 10 million, but what it took you to get to 10 million is completely different as what it's going to take you to get to 100 million. Yeah. And typically what that is, again, really having a real growth strategy in place, really having a defined markets, defined direction, the sectors you're doing, where to play, where not to play, having prioritization, much more of a structured approach in terms of why we're here, what we're doing. And again, making sure they're profitable. A lot of smaller companies, especially has been the last few decades, it's like profitability is something, oh yeah, we'll get to that, how many years from now. And, whereas larger companies, you can't do that, right? Once you're a public company, even for a long time, you can't do that. Yeah. So there's, I don't want to look at it as pros and cons. I would just look at it in terms of differentiators, in terms of what it takes beyond the actual, executing again in a structured way that's going to get you to the type of success and the level of success that you, a company or a business unit or a small business is trying to get to.
Yeah. Okay. No, there's a lot of wisdom in that. Yeah. So tell us a little bit more. You've got another company that you run. We'll touch on that in a minute, but just tell us a little bit more about your book. Any other tips in there that you want to unpack that you think will help? You've covered quite a bit already, but any other elements?
Well, yeah, like I said, I had actually, I wrote the book because it was part of several speaking engagements I had. I was speaking in front of a lot of business owners, and different organizations. And I realized, depending on the size of the company, sometimes they, just simply couldn't afford my services or afford me, and that was fine. But I wanted to get this information out. And then there was others who did. And I realized after doing some of these presentations, a lot of it was educating on, again, what is growth strategy? How can you, apply it to your business, things like that. And I myself, like I mentioned earlier, even though it's been many years, I didn't even know what it fully was until I actually did it. Some people think, oh, it's a business plan. It's not. It's a strategic plan. Well, yes, you get to the strategic plan stage, but you still have to develop the strategy part of it. And for a lot of companies, strategic plan is just like a budget exercise. It's not really strategic. It's just like updating what you did before. And so, my passion is really to help businesses grow. And like I said, grow foundationally sound and profitably, and making sure they can grow in times of feast or famine, which is why that's the title of the book. I want companies to know how to grow in times of feast or famine. I know a lot of people during COVID, depending on what sector, sometimes some industries have done very, very well, and then others have, have had to kind of reevaluate, what their business model is and how they can actually pivot or stay with what they're doing, but do it maybe differently, or just hold on until certain things get back to. And so, when I wrote it originally, I looked at it and I did an update this year because I said, okay, look what we're going through. I think this is really needed. And honestly, there really wasn't a lot to update. And that's because, I am a very strong believer in fundamentals. These are the types of things that is going to help your company be fundamentally sound. I did it like a how-to manual, so to speak. So while it is 10 steps, it's not just stories or case studies. It has that too. But I really break down step by step, how to look at the market, how to figure out how to enter new markets, how to, understand the competitive landscape, how to do, I mentioned earlier, an in-depth company assessment, how to take it down from the strategy development piece all the way to how do we go now and create a plan, and how do we figure out what the strategic initiatives should be, down to the actual execution. Because what I do in my practice is growth strategy development and execution. And I always put both because that is part of my joy. I'm not really let's just say a typical consultant. I know because I work for some of the larger firms that went to school with a lot of people, and it's not a slight against them. It's just that for me, my joy is not just in developing the strategy guide. I want to actually see you use it, and make it happen, not just sit on a shelf, not just, things like that. And so my book really will walk you and your members of your executive team or whoever else in your company through exactly how to do it. And like I said, it's a very practical how-to, so you can actually implement and execute the steps yourself. And I even go through pitfalls and how to avoid them. And like I said, everything is, I try to make it as easy as possible for something that can be very complex, but it's almost like a specific roadmap that you can follow, that you can apply. And I give examples of how I've done it for other businesses as well, but not just anecdotal. As I give you the steps, there are specific examples of some of the things that I use for the companies that I have helped grow. And I made sure to put in examples of, startups, small businesses, mid-sized companies, as well as Fortune 1000, so that at any stage that you're at in your particular company, you'll be able to relate to some of how I was able to work with some of the companies that I've worked with to achieve success, and how you can do so yourself for your own company and your own business.
Yeah, that sounds really good. Very practical, but also, as you say, it covers a multitude of different sized businesses as well, so applicable to everyone. So that's really good. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So tell us about the other company.
Yeah, so I have another company. It's very interesting. When I was in business school, I actually I had someone very, very wonderful tear apart my CV because it wasn't very good. But with her doing that, it made me extremely marketable. And I ended up getting more interviews than anyone else, even though at the time I was the youngest one who was there. Fast forward, when I first started to start up my strategy consulting practice, I got words of wisdom from some wonderful mentors and advisors at the time who had built up successful consulting practices. And they all said, since I didn't want to necessarily travel and I was in a new city at the time, it'd take between 6 to 12 months before I'd get probably my first client. And they were right, because it took about 10 months. So they were actually right. So I thought to myself, well, I don't want to wait around, all these times to do nothing. So I started off what I thought considered a side business, which was a resume and CV business at the time. But that's something that has stayed throughout the years. And so I do still have it. That business is even a little bit older than my strategy business, technically, like 17 years, if you call it that. Whereas the strategy business is about 16 and a half, roughly, or a little bit over 16. So that's called Diamond Executive Resumes. So while I have worked on doing resumes for at all stages, I have shifted to now only focusing on executive and board level resumes, because now at the stage of my career, I am looking at board roles and board seats, and there have been companies that are approaching me to do that as well. And I know for a lot of business owners and executives, you're looking for people on your boards or to bring to your team. And honestly, not everyone has their CV or bio in a way that adequately reflects their what they can bring to a particular company, regardless if it's an executive or board role. So Diamond Executive Resumes is something that I started recently, and it's going very well. And it's something that I'm also providing to those who need it. In my mind, it's still about getting, where my main thing is getting businesses to the next level. Like I mentioned earlier, businesses are still a collection of people, and so I look at the executive and board level resume and bio service as helping individuals get to the next level. because, that's something that they'll need in order to be effective, at least to get them in the door. Now, what they do after that is up to them, but at least I help them with that first step.
Yeah. So what would you say, just it's curiosity really more than anything, but somebody that's at board level, but they're looking to shift their career to do something similar field, but maybe different competencies. Is that easy? Is that easier for sort of board level people because they've reached a certain level, so that's what they're benchmarked against? Or does it still come back down to sort of competency, experience, how well does it fit to what we think? The reason why I'm asking it, partly, there's the challenge of communicating who you are through your resume, which I know you either do really well or you don't, which then determines where you get the conversation, the interview, where you can really connect with people or not. I think the interview is two-way, isn't it? You decide if you actually want to work for the company as well as they decide if they want to hire you. So I don't know. Does that make sense? Does my question make sense?
Well, I think, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds to me like you're asking really more about transferable skills and how to best position yourself if you are looking to do something different outside of maybe what you've done historically, or how to best, position yourself in general, right? To make sure that you are highlighting the areas that would be attractive, whether it's an executive role or if it's a board seat, that you're going for. And I would say, I've worked with, again, many different executives and many different individuals over the years. Honestly, one of my specialties is actually help. I help people within their same sector and their same level of experience, but actually one of my subspecialties is helping individuals from different fields and different backgrounds get into other areas. And the way that I do it is transferable skill based. Just like everything else, you have to kind of look at it like, okay, what is your goal? That's always the biggest thing I always ask. Like, what is it that you're trying to achieve? If it's a company, if it's an industry, if it's a size, because that's always more important. Like, what do you want? And some people know what they want. Others, you have to work with them to figure it out. But most of the time, people know what they want. Then they say, okay, well, now let's take a look what you have. Okay. So when you take a look what you have and that's what you want, it's about me helping to translate what they have into what they want, so that at the end of the day, whoever is the one who's looking at the resume or the bio, the CV for a board, it might be the CEO, it might be the board chair, it might be a recruiter, executive recruiter, they have different levels. And then for the executives, it could be the same individuals or different, right? Depending on the level and who's the one looking at it. It can make it hard for them. They have to look at you like you're the perfect fit for what it is that they want. With executive levels and with companies, it's a little bit different because they typically have the job descriptions and they typically have, what it is that they exactly want. With boards, some boards are more traditional in a sense. They are going to only want to find someone in their industry, X number of years experience, they have this title, etc. But as the world is changing and things are changing a lot of boards are shifting from that because honestly, they have to, right? It's like, if you only want someone in your industry sector, and let's say your industry shrinks, like for example, I had like a paper client, and they were number one in pulp and paper for like almost 100 years. Well, guess what? The world doesn't use as much paper. So if all you hire is people with paper experience, and those are the only ones that are on your board or on your executive team, what's happening now when, people are doing email and everything electronically? Like, it's not the same thing, right? 100 years ago, no one was doing that. So now all you want is people with just that background. That won't work. So they're understanding that sometimes you have to diversify. And so being able to think of it in those terms and the value that you bring and helping to bring the company forward from, again, executive or a board perspective from a value creation standpoint, and then looking to see how you can do that with what you have and what you've accomplished and your goals and making it easy to translate is something that I found and am finding to be very effective.
Okay, yeah, it's helping the recipient to then sell it to their colleagues, the board, whoever it is that they need to as well.
Right.
And yeah, it's thinking the next step on, isn't it? Really, rather than just the individual. No, that's really useful. Just as we've got a couple more minutes left on this episode, I just wanted to kind of explore a little bit. What would you say would be, you shared quite a lot already from your experiences, but what would you say would be one of the biggest lessons that you've learned through either business or both businesses that you've started?
The biggest lesson? That's different. I would say, I'd say for both, especially the growth strategy business, but I would say for both businesses is, Um, Business is a lot of times planting a lot of seeds, and you really never know when they're going to, when they're going to sprout and when they're going to grow, and you'll be able to kind of get the abundance from them. After doing this for so long, it's been interesting. Again, I've been fortunate enough to do a lot of great work, on the company side, on the resume side too. I mean, after 17 years of resume, I have a 98% placement rate, so it's been, promotion rate, because some come from promotion. So promotion placement is like 98%. And then I have, all these companies, 65 and 31 and everything else. So I have a lot of stats, but it's not just about the stats. It's about, I meet people, I articulate what it is that I do. I try to get an understanding of their needs and how I feel I can serve them. Obviously, once I get the clients, do as great of a job as I can, because I do enjoy their success. But there's a lot of times I'll meet people and they're not ready, or they seem like they're not ready. And I just leave, I just say, okay, that's fine. Like, I never try to push. I know business development is very important. It's a critical aspect of any company and any business. Sure. But sometimes just building those relationships and just communicating, articulating what you do, and just doing it enough and consistently, and trying to make sure that you have that is so important, because I've had people that I've met and they'll come back like 5 years later or 3 years later. Oh, are you still doing this? Okay, great. Now we're ready. And I laugh to myself, like, okay, we've been all this time. Or, or someone will refer me, to someone else. And I've gotten a lot of, honestly, majority of my business have been on referrals, and they'll come from places that I would have never expected. And so, that's just really to say what it's taught me, because I am very much a planner. I want to know the answer to everything. I want to know when it is, how it is, so I can tackle it. What is the problem? How can I solve it? What is your goal? How can I help you achieve it? I'm very much, I'm still personable, but I'm very much a get it done kind of a person, and get it done mentality. And I still am with what I do, but I realize that there's a certain level of openness and just, being very clear on what you want to receive. And honestly, the universe will bring you what you want, and things sometimes come in very unexpected ways. And so while sometimes, yes, even I have had to go through times of feast or famine, and the famines are never great. They are horrible. I don't care what anyone says. You do continue to persevere, and then you get through them. And then for those companies or businesses that didn't make it, or decided to do something different, you still have a wealth of experience that you can take to whatever it is that you do next. And so for me, that's one of the biggest things that I've learned across these things. And that's something that is definitely transferable across all businesses. And honestly, I've seen it with a lot of the companies and businesses that I've worked with as well.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's really good. Thank you for sharing that. Thanks for the insight that you've shared. I can't believe time's gone as quick as it has. How can people touch base so they can get the book? Is a good first step to learn a bit more about the 10-step processes, look at the case studies, but also dig into a little bit more than what we've sort of scratched the surface on. Head to the website first. Is that the best first step?
Yes, it is. I was going to say that, my website is elevatediamondstrategy.com. It's exactly how it sounds. To try to make it very simple. So yes, you go /book. The book is there. You can order directly from the site. By the time this airs, they should be able to order from Barnes and Noble as well, because it will be on there in hard copy and e-version right now. Hard copy and e-version from the site directly. For Diamond Executive Resumes, it's the same thing. DiamondExecutiveResumes.com, at least for the resume and bio service for those who are interested or look to recommend for others. But that's really the best way to get the book, and the best way to reach me directly for any of you who need consulting or advisory services, or, with growth strategy, development, or execution yourself.
Okay. Yeah, no, that sounds really good. Thank you for sharing all of that. Yeah, thank you for your time today. That's all we have time for now, but hopefully you'll come back at some point and we can dig into it even more. For everybody listening as well, take stock of what we've been talking about. You need a strategy to grow. Depending how fast you want to grow, there's other elements that Michelle shared that you need to factor in as well. So I would encourage you to at least get the book to start with, and then follow Michelle, have a conversation with her, see how she can help you. She's got lots of expertise to offer, which can save you a lot of time and a lot of hard years and famine, potentially as well. So lots of reasons why you should leverage our services. But yes, that's all we've got time for now. We will wrap up this episode, but we will catch you next time. So bye for now.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Yeukai Business Show. We will be back to bring you more episodes with success stories and advice straight from the experts. Want more? Check out www.yukaibusinessshow.com. Get your free trial of our virtual assistant service today. Just visit www.worldoutsourcingsolutions.com. Quote WOS18 or send us an email at support@worldoutsourcingsolutions.com.